Welcome, everyone, to Capital Quakes, the podcast that digs into the tremors shaking Washington and, by extension, all of us. I am Alex Reed, and today we are tackling a topic that, honestly, feels like a recurring nightmare: the U.S. government shutdown. And not just any shutdown, but the one that officially began on the 1st of October, 2025.
And I am Sophie Hart. It is a somber day, Alex, and unfortunately, not an unfamiliar one for many federal employees, myself included, or for anyone who has been paying attention to the political cycles. The inability of Congress to pass funding is not just a headline. It is a very real, very painful reality for millions of Americans right now. It really underscores a systemic issue that keeps rearing its head.
Absolutely, Sophie. And that is exactly what we want to dive into today. Who is truly feeling the pinch from this shutdown? And what does it mean for the immediate future? When we talk about a government shutdown, it is easy to think of it as some abstract political chess game. But, for so many people, it is personal. Let us start with the most obvious and perhaps most vulnerable group: federal workers. What are we seeing there?
It is devastating, Alex. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of dedicated public servants, through no fault of their own, suddenly facing either furlough or being deemed essential, forced to work without pay. Imagine getting up every day, going to your job, performing critical functions for the country, knowing your next paycheck is a big question mark. The stress, the uncertainty, the financial strain, it is immense. For those furloughed, it is an immediate loss of income, period. For those working without pay, they are accumulating bills while waiting for Congress to get its act together. It is a gut punch to morale, too,
It truly is. I have heard stories, even just in the past few days, about federal workers struggling to pay rent or buy groceries. Many live paycheck to paycheck, just like a lot of other Americans. It is not like these are high-flying executives. These are people maintaining our infrastructure, processing our benefits, protecting our borders. And beyond their direct financial hit, there is the ripple effect, right? Small businesses that rely on federal employees as customers in communities surrounding government offices can take a hit too.
Precisely, Alex. Think of the coffee shops, the dry cleaners, the restaurants near federal buildings. Their business dries up almost overnight. It is not just about federal employees' individual finances. It is about the economic ecosystems built around them. And it is not just D.C. either. Federal agencies have offices in almost every state, every major city. This is not a localized problem. It is a nationwide economic slowdown that starts with these workers. And frankly, the essential versus non-essential distinction, while necessary for core safety, creates a hierarchy of stress. Everyone's job is important, and feeling like you are disposable is incredibly damaging.
That is a really good point, Sophie. It is not just the direct financial impact, but the psychological toll and the sense of being undervalued. Moving beyond the workers themselves, let us talk about the services citizens rely on daily. We have heard about national parks closing. But what about things like passport applications, IRS operations, or even the processing of Social Security benefits? How are those impacted?
Well, it is a mixed bag, and that is part of the confusion and frustration. Essential services, like air traffic control or emergency response, generally continue, but often with reduced staff or without pay. But for many day-to-day functions, it is a slowdown or a complete halt. Passport applications, significant delays. If you are planning international travel soon, You might be out of luck. The IRS, audits and non-essential customer service cease. If you are waiting on a tax refund or have a complex tax issue, good luck getting assistance. Social Security checks generally continue because their funding is mandatory, but new applications or appeals might face delays due to administrative staff furloughs. It is a bureaucratic bottleneck that ripples through practically every aspect of civic life.
And the national parks, which you mentioned earlier. It is not just about missing out on a scenic hike. These are often major tourist attractions that support local economies. When they shut down, local businesses, hotels, restaurants, they all suffer, and the lack of oversight can lead to vandalism or resource damage, which then costs more to repair once the parks reopen. It is a false economy, is not it? Saving money by shutting down actually costs more in the long run.
Exactly, Alex. It is penny-wise and pound-foolish. We saw this in previous shutdowns. Accumulating trash, unattended facilities, and lasting damage. The deferred maintenance backlog just gets worse. It is a shame, really, because these are national treasures. Beyond that, think about other less visible but critical functions. Research grants halt, scientific data collection pauses, food safety inspections can be reduced. The consequences are far-reaching and, honestly, a bit alarming. Public health and safety are compromised in ways people do not always immediately connect to a funding lapse.
That is a terrifying thought, Sophie, especially the food safety aspect. It really highlights how interconnected everything is. But let us dig a bit deeper into social programs, because these often impact the most vulnerable populations. What about programs like WIC, SNAP, or even healthcare services that rely on federal funding or administration? Are we seeing immediate impacts there?
This is where it gets particularly grim, Alex. While some programs, like SNAP, often have some residual funds that can last a few weeks into a shutdown, the uncertainty alone is a major source of anxiety for families. New applications or recertifications could be delayed. WIC, the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for women, infants, and children, which provides critical food assistance, often faces immediate threats. If a shutdown drags on, these funds can quickly dwindle, putting pregnant women, new mothers, and young children at risk of losing access to essential nutrition. It is a moral failure, in my opinion, to put basic necessities like food for children on the chopping block in a political standoff.
I could not agree more, Sophie. It feels like the most vulnerable among us are used as bargaining chips in these high-stakes political games. And what about veterans' benefits? I know VA hospitals typically continue services because they are largely mandatory. But what about other veteran-focused programs or benefit processing?
You are right. VA medical facilities generally remain open, which is a relief for many veterans. However, backlogs in claims processing, education benefits, or housing assistance can occur. Any service that relies on administrative staff, who are now furloughed, will likely experience significant delays. It is not a complete halt, but it adds stress and uncertainty to a population that has already sacrificed so much for the country. It is another example of how even essential functions can degrade under the weight of a shutdown. And frankly, the constant threat of these shutdowns erodes public trust in government's ability to provide stable, reliable services.
It definitely does. The long-term trust issue is a huge point, Sophie. Every time this happens, it just reinforces the idea that government is dysfunctional and unreliable, which then has broader implications for civic engagement and confidence. So, we have talked about the impacts, which are pretty dire. Let us shift gears and talk about the what is next part. What exactly might it take to end this 2025 shutdown? What are the political sticking points, and what is the path forward?
That is the million-dollar question, is not it, Alex? From what we are hearing and seeing, the primary sticking points revolve around appropriations for specific agencies, and, as always, the size and scope of government spending, coupled with certain policy riders attached to funding bills. This time around, there is a significant disagreement over climate change initiatives and defense spending, with one side pushing for substantial cuts and the other resisting. There are also deep divisions on social issues, with some factions trying to defund programs they oppose. It is not just about money. It is about leveraging the funding process to push ideological agendas, and neither side seems willing to blink, at least not yet.
So, it is not just a budget fight. It is a battle of ideologies using the budget as a weapon. What typically breaks these deadlocks, Sophie? Is it public pressure, an impending crisis, or just a slow, grinding negotiation process behind closed doors?
Historically, it is often a combination, Alex. Public pressure definitely plays a role. As the impacts become more visible and painful, think widespread flight delays if air traffic controllers start calling in sick, or actual food shortages for WIC recipients. The outcry grows, and politicians feel more heat. Sometimes, a specific crisis emerges that forces their hand. But mostly, it comes down to a grudging compromise. One side or both has to decide that the political cost of continuing the shutdown outweighs the cost of giving a little ground. It usually involves some form of a continuing resolution, which temporarily funds the government, often with some concessions on both sides, allowing for further negotiations. The risk is that these continuing resolutions become the norm, perpetually pushing the can down the road rather than solving the underlying issues.
And that the kicking the can down the road approach just ensures we will be back here again, does not it? What is your prediction, Sophie, given the current political climate? How long do you think this shutdown could last, and what is the most likely scenario for its resolution?
It is tough to say for certain, but given the entrenched positions we are seeing, I would not be surprised if this one drags on longer than some of the recent, shorter shutdowns. I am thinking weeks, possibly even a month or more, if neither side feels enough public pressure or sees a clear political win from ending it. The most likely resolution, in my view, will be a short-term continuing resolution, perhaps through the end of the year, with a promise of further negotiations on more contentious issues. This would allow government services to resume, federal workers to get paid, and prevent some of the more severe economic impacts. But it would not solve the fundamental disagreements. It is a temporary truce, not a lasting peace, and it means we could face another shutdown threat in a few months.
So, a temporary fix that postpones, rather than resolves, the core issues. That is a sobering thought, Sophie. It means millions of Americans will continue to live with this sword of Damocles hanging over their heads, unsure if their jobs, their benefits, or critical services will be available in a few months' time. It really does erode confidence, does not it?
It absolutely does, Alex. And it is not just about confidence in government, but also confidence in the U.S. economy, both domestically and internationally. It projects an image of instability and a lack of coherent governance, which can deter investment and damage our standing globally. At a time when we face so many complex challenges, both at home and abroad, this self-inflicted wound is incredibly detrimental. We need a fundamental shift in how Congress approaches its most basic duty, funding the government.
Well said, Sophie. It is a stark reminder that what happens in Washington has real, tangible consequences for every single person across this country. We have talked about the direct impact on federal workers, the slowdowns in vital services like passport processing and tax assistance, the closures of our beloved national parks, and most critically, the potential disruption to crucial social programs for our most vulnerable. And as you highlighted, Sophie, the path forward is murky, likely involving temporary solutions that kick the can down the road, rather than truly addressing the root causes.
Indeed, Alex. My hope is that the sheer scale of the impact on everyday Americans will eventually compel our leaders to find a more sustainable way forward. Because the cost, both human and economic, of these repeated shutdowns is simply too high. We need accountability, and we need our elected officials to remember who they serve.
A powerful and vital message, Sophie. And that is all the time we have for today on Capital Quakes. Thank you, Sophie Hart, for your invaluable insights and perspective on this critical issue. And thank you to all our listeners for tuning in. We will continue to track this shutdown and bring you updates as they unfold. Until next time, stay informed and stay vocal.